On January 1st in medieval Europe, priests wearing terrifying masks would celebrate Mass at the altar. They'd eat black pudding during the service, burn old shoes instead of incense, and dress in women's clothing. This wasn't sacrilege. This was Christmas. Welcome to the Feast of Fools, just one of the bizarre medieval Christmas traditions that would shock modern Christians. For 12 days straight, medieval people ate, drank, cross-dressed, played games, and broke every social rule, all in celebration of Christ's birth. Today, we're revealing how medieval people actually celebrated Christmas. No sanitized history, no Little House on the Prairie nostalgia, just the weird, wild, and surprisingly pagan reality of Christmas in the Middle Ages. And I guarantee you'll never look at your family's Christmas traditions the same way again. The 12-day party marathon. First, forget everything you know about modern Christmas. Medieval Christmas wasn't a single day. It was a 12-day festival running from December 25th through January 5th, and before that, a 40-day preparation period called Advent, starting on November 11th. During Advent, medieval Christians fasted. No rich foods, no meat, no overindulgence. It was a month of restraint and religious reflection. But on Christmas morning, all bets were off. Starting before dawn on December 25th with a special Christmas Mass, medieval people would begin a celebration that wouldn't stop for 12 solid days. 12 days of feasting, drinking, dancing, games, cross-dressing, and general mayhem. And this wasn't just the nobility. Everyone participated. Peasants, merchants, clergy, nobility. Christmas was the one time of year when social hierarchies loosened, work stopped completely, and people just partied. For medieval peasants working brutal agricultural schedules, Christmas was the longest holiday of the year, their only real break, so they made it count. The feast. Eating like there's no tomorrow. Medieval Christmas feasts were legendary and completely over the top. In 1213, England's King John hosted a Christmas feast that consumed 24 hogsheads of wine, that's over 6,000 gallons, 200 heads of pork, 1,000 hens, 500 pounds of wax for candles, 50 pounds of pepper, 2 pounds of saffron, 100 pounds of almonds, plus countless other spices and foods. That's one meal for one household. Multiply that across every noble household in Europe, and you get a sense of the scale. But even peasants feasted during Christmas. Manor records show that lords were required to provide special Christmas food to their workers. One 13th century shepherd in Somerset received a loaf of bread in a dish of meat on Christmas Eve, and his dog got a loaf on Christmas Day. Yes, even the dog got Christmas dinner. What did medieval people eat? Not turkey. That wasn't introduced to Europe until the 15th century, after the discovery of the Americas. Instead, goose was the most common Christmas bird for ordinary families. Wild boar was the prestige meat, the ceremonial bringing in of the boar's head. A whole cooked boar's head paraded through the feasting hall while singers performed special songs became a major Christmas tradition. Some households even used wooden boar's head masks when real ones weren't available. Roast swan for the wealthy. Swans belonged to the crown, so eating one was a status symbol. Peacock for the ultra-rich, and here's the bizarre part. They would roast the peacock, then re-stuff it back into its feathers and present it at the table as if it were still alive. Maximum spectacle. Venison was popular, but peasants could only eat the umbles, the offal and internal organs. The good cuts were reserved for nobility. This is where we get the phrase, eating humble pie, pie made from umbles. And the drinking? Medieval Christmas was absolutely soaked in alcohol. Wine, ale, mead flowing constantly for 12 days. King Henry III of England kept a special wine cellar at Reading Abbey just for Christmas. In 1 year, he ordered 60 tons of wine. That's over 76,000 bottles for Christmas celebrations. No wonder medieval sources describe Christmas as a time of extremes in eating, drinking, and rule-breaking. The Feast of Fools, Chaos in Church. On January 1st, medieval clergy celebrated the Feast of Fools, and it was absolute chaos. This was an officially sanctioned day when junior clergy could mock their superiors, social hierarchies were reversed, and normal rules didn't apply. Church records from Wells, Exeter, Lincoln, Canterbury, and York all contain complaints about outrageous behavior during this feast. Priests celebrated Mass wearing terrifying masks. They dressed in women's clothing. They burned old shoes instead of incense. They ate black pudding at the altar, which was considered blasphemous any other day of the year. Why? This was a Christian adaptation of the Roman Saturnalia, the pagan winter festival where masters served slaves, social roles were reversed, and chaos reigned temporarily before order was restored. The church tried to control it, but ultimately couldn't eliminate it, so they Christianized it instead. The Feast of Fools became part of official Christmas celebrations for centuries. Senior clergy were expected to give way to juniors, who could demand embarrassing tasks from authority figures. It was institutionalized misrule, sanctioned by the church itself. Twelfth Night, the Bean King. The centerpiece was the bean cake, a rich fruit cake with a dried bean hidden inside. Whoever found the bean in their slice became the Bean King, or Lord of Misrule for the night. And the Lord of Misrule had real power. They could demand silly forfeits, penalties, or embarrassing tasks from anyone, including parents, schoolmasters, and even lords. Social hierarchies were completely upended. This is what Shakespeare was referencing in his comedy Twelfth Night. The cross-dressing heroine and practical jokes reflect actual Twelfth Night traditions of misrule in gender bending. Twelfth Night was the final explosion of chaos before returning to ordinary life, the last night of freedom before the social order reasserted itself. Mumming, door-to-door terror. Throughout the 12 days of Christmas, groups of young men would dress in terrifying masks and animal costumes and go door to door performing songs, telling jokes, and generally scaring people. These were mummers, and they were a beloved Christmas tradition. Some wore animal masks, some dressed as women, some disguised themselves in the old fashion of the devil, meaning they tried to look like demons, ghosts, or trolls. From Christmas Eve until Twelfth Night, these mummers would roam through villages in the middle of the night, frightening people on the streets and farms. It was sanctioned Halloween in the dead of winter. Some did it for fun. Others expected payment, a few coins or small gifts in exchange for their performance. If you didn't give them something, they might curse you or cause mischief. In Northern Europe, these Yule mummers took it even further, pretending to be supernatural creatures, ghosts, trolls, spirits of the dead. The long, dark winter nights made it all the more terrifying. This tradition survives today in various forms: caroling, originally done by mummers, Christmas pantomimes in Britain, and even trick-or-treating at Halloween, which borrowed from Christmas mumming traditions. Gender bending and cross-dressing. Medieval Christmas had a surprising amount of cross-dressing. Men dressed as women, women dressed as men, clergy dressed as the opposite sex. This wasn't seen as scandalous, it was expected. Why? Because Christmas was a time of inversion, when normal rules didn't apply. Gender bending was part of the topsy-turvy nature of the season. This came directly from pagan Roman traditions. During Saturnalia, Celtic regions of the Roman Empire celebrated by dressing in opposite-sex clothing and dancing with animal masks. When Christianity absorbed these traditions, the cross-dressing came along with it. By the medieval period, it was so normalized that even church records mention clergy dressing as women during Christmas celebrations. The Feast of Fools explicitly involved gender reversal. Twelfth Night featured cross-dressing as part of the misrule. Mumming groups often included men dressed as women. Modern Christmas has sanitized this completely, but for medieval people, gender bending was fundamental to the holiday's chaotic spirit. Games, dancing, and entertainment. Christmas was the time for games and entertainment, and medieval people took this seriously. Dice games and gambling were enormously popular, despite the church's disapproval. Christmas was when people could gamble openly without punishment. Dancing was constant. Folk dances, circle dances, couples dancing. Churches tried to ban dancing, but failed. People danced anyway, often right outside the church after Mass. Caroling, but not like today. The word carol originally meant to sing and dance in a circle. One person would sing while others danced around them. It was participatory, physical, and rowdy. The church eventually banned carols inside churches because they disrupted the solemn masses. So carolers took their songs outside and went door to door. Ice skating, sort of. Medieval people would strap large animal bones to their feet and slide across frozen lakes. This was one of the most popular winter activities. Theatrical performances became common by the later Middle Ages. Nativity plays with elaborate costumes depicting the Christmas story, often including King Herod as a villain the audience could boo and hiss at. Storytelling and riddles around the fire, often late into the night. This was entertainment before entertainment technology. People created their own fun through social interaction. For 12 days, normal work stopped and people just played. It was institutionalized leisure on a scale modern people can barely imagine. Decorations: holly, ivy, and mistletoe. Medieval homes were decorated with greenery, but the church wasn't happy about it. Holly, ivy, and mistletoe were all ancient pagan symbols associated with pre-Christian winter festivals. Celtic Druids considered holly a good luck charm that warded off evil spirits and protected homes from lightning. Mistletoe was sacred in Druidic tradition and had fertility associations, which is why kissing under mistletoe became a thing. The church repeatedly tried to ban these decorations because of their pagan origins, but people ignored the bans. Even the poorest household could go into the forest and collect greenery, so it was a universal decoration. Eventually, the church gave up and reinterpreted the symbolism. Holly's red berries represented Christ's blood. Its thorny leaves represented the crown of thorns. The evergreen nature of holly and ivy symbolized eternal life through Christ. Medieval people decorated with greenery because it brought life and color into dark, cold homes during the bleakest part of winter. The pagan symbolism might have faded, but the tradition persisted. Gift giving, not like today. Medieval people did exchange gifts at Christmas, but nothing like modern gift giving. Gifts were usually money given to servants and the poor. Wealthy people would give Christmas boxes, hollow clay pots with slits on top where coins were placed. These pots were called piggies, which is where we get piggy banks. The money had to be saved until January 6th, Epiphany, when the pots would be smashed open. This is the origin of Boxing Day, the day after Christmas when boxes were opened and gifts distributed. But there was a dark side. December 25th was also a quarter day, one of 4 days per year when rents and debts were due. Many poor tenants had to pay their rent on Christmas Day, which meant their Christmas gift might immediately go to their landlord. Gift-giving wasn't about consumer culture or wish lists. It was about social obligations, the wealthy giving to the poor, masters giving to servants, lords giving to tenants. It reinforced social hierarchies while temporarily loosening them. The tradition traces back to the 3 wise men bringing gifts to baby Jesus, but medieval practice was much more transactional than sentimental. Returning to reality. Plow Monday. All good things must end. On January 6th, Epiphany, the 12 days of Christmas concluded and normal life resumed. For peasants returning to brutal agricultural work after 12 days of celebration, this transition was harsh, so they made a game of it. On the first Monday after Epiphany, called Plow Monday, young men would hold plow races at sunrise, dragging plows through the village. It was a way to lighten the burden of returning to work. January 7th, St. Distaff's Day, featured comic battles between the sexes. Men would set fire to women's flax, used for spinning, and women would soak the men with water. It was a carnival misrule, extending one final day beyond Christmas. These traditions helped medieval people transition from the chaos of Christmas back to ordinary life. The party couldn't last forever, but they found ways to ease the return to reality. So this was medieval Christmas. 12 days of non-stop feasting, drinking, cross-dressing, gambling, mumming, gender-bending chaos, sanctioned by the church and participated in by everyone from peasants to kings. It wasn't the quiet, reflective, family-centered Christmas we imagine. It was loud, public, chaotic, often drunk, frequently blasphemous by modern standards, and absolutely rooted in pagan traditions that the church couldn't eliminate, so decided to Christianize instead. The medieval Christmas was a pressure valve. After months of hard labor and religious restrictions, people needed release. Christmas provided it. 12 days when normal rules didn't apply, when peasants could mock nobility, when clergy could wear masks and burn shoes, when everyone could dress however they wanted and party until they collapsed. Many traditions we practice today, carols, decorating with greenery, the Christmas feast, gift-giving, Twelfth Night parties, come directly from medieval customs. We've sanitized them, made them family-friendly, removed the cross-dressing and the drunken chaos. But the medieval spirit survives. Christmas is still the time when we overeat, overdrink, take time off work, gather in large groups, and temporarily forget our worries. We're still medieval in that sense. We've just gotten a lot more polite about it. Thanks for watching. If this changed how you think about Christmas traditions, hit subscribe. Next week, how medieval people survived winter without modern heating. The techniques they used might shock you. Drop a comment. Which medieval Christmas tradition should we bring back? I'm voting for the Lord of Misrule. See you in the next one, and have a very medieval Christmas.